What's up, family? Welcome to Minority Report. My name is Paris Mullen, aka Auntie Espresso Martini, my favorite. And we're going to get into the tea today and find out exactly what's brewing.
Paris Mullen.
HIV activism.
And Ask Your Aunties Gay Relationships. So get your cups ready for Minority Report.
Hey, welcome to Minority Report. It's Auntie Carell.
It's Auntie Dewan.
And it's Auntie Jarrell.
And the
And
one
we had
and
to hop
only
on
Auntie.
in. Oh, go ahead. Go.
You sure
go.
did. Go
And the one
ahead.
and only Auntie Espresso Martini. So happy to
I
be with
know
the other
that's
aunties today.
Yes.
And
welcome,
hold
welcome.
1 second. Can we give her props for actually pronouncing the word correctly instead of putting the X in there? She said espresso. For all you hoes out there that be mispronouncing shit, it's espresso, not espresso.
They be at the martini bar thinking they fancy and don't know how to pronounce
No,
it.
honey, not martini bar at the Starbucks. Let's be real. Can I get a double espresso? No, you cannot. We do
No,
not
you
serve
cannot. We
those.
do not serve that here.
We don't
It
need
does
that.
not exist. What is an
Even
espresso? You can espresso your way out the door.
EXIT.
Well, community, you already heard the fourth voice. We got a special guest this week. Paris. Right, the government name is Paris, but he already said it's Auntie Espresso Martini.
Do we need to have a hooked on phonics?
Right.
Espresso Martini. This is Auntie Espresso Martini, yes.
I love it.
Yes.
Well, Paris, thank you, boo. Thank you for joining us today.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me. It's an honor. So much light on this screen here on this podcast. I love it. So thank you.
I be trying. Thank you. I'm glad you noticed. I be trying.
Don't try because you woke up that way. Don't even try. Okay?
You right. Okay. You
Right.
right.
Girl, leave it up to the Capricorns to suck up all the air out of the room.
All the air. And we had to hop on into the episode because Jarrell and Paris were already like, oh, girl, you from there? So I was like, okay, so clearly Paris is from Seattle originally or grew up in that area. So I'll let y'all go ahead and finish your conversation.
Oh my goodness, so much to be said. Auntie Jarrell, it's not Auntie Jarrell. Jarrell, do you want to start on that?
We were just talking about earlier that I mentioned that most of the time when we have guests on the podcast, they always closer to Carell and Dewan. Don't nobody be over here, okay? So when Paris was like, "Oh, I used to live in Seattle," I'll be back. I said, of course we can link up. Absolutely, because don't nobody be over here, especially not melanin. So
that's the other piece. So maybe the elephant in the room, maybe not. But yes, 30 years in Seattle, originally Minneapolis, but moving I was 9, don't start doing the math.
I lived in Minneapolis too.
You did?
The bitch, I sure did.
Come on.
I moved here from Minneapolis.
And I moved there from Minneapolis. Look at same with you.
Look at there.
Okay, we might be related actually.
That was the follow-up question.
We might be related actually. It's 23 and me. But yes, Seattle is beautiful. Washington's beautiful. I don't believe the Pacific Northwest gets enough attention as far as the nation is concerned. It's just geographically a beautiful place to live and to be in. It has everything: the deserts, the plains, the mountains, ocean, lakes, all that. So beautiful place from that perspective. It has evolved and changed so much even since I was there for 30 years. I've seen a lot, but most specifically the Black part. When I landed in territory in Minneapolis, I was like, what in the blank any Negroes doing out here? But it's because it's a different kind of thing out there. No shade on now. We're making big generalizations on Black folks in Seattle. There's just not many of us, and so to find community, belonging, if you're looking for people that look like you, can be challenging there. And so, Audre Lorde said as well that all your skin folk ain't your kin folk. So once you do find, folks that look like you, is there alignment around embracing huge quotes here, big quotes. One's blackness. And I'll just say, side note, I get to define what blackness is for me. But find others that are embracing their blackness, in their unique ways can be challenging. So I'll stop there.
No, you're 100% right. No, you're actually 1,000% right, because I've often found out here, because there's so few of us, it's very easy to also get into a competition between each other. Like there's not enough space, right? And then that's when your blackness really starts to get challenged. And then you're like, all right, bitch, well, guess what? I nuck and buck just as much as you do. So what we gonna do, right? Because I'm a pull up girl. I will put my address and be parked outside on a chair, on a lawn chair, waiting for you.
Honk, honk.
Okay. So I will have the balloons outside being like, I'm right here, ho.
Up.
Right. So I've had to learn out here that exact same thing, that, all skin folk and kinfolk, because they will do that type of shit in secret. And where I'm from, when you move in secret like that and you move in quiet, that's even, the disrespect is even bigger. I'd rather you be up front and be like, hey, this just ain't gonna work. Nothing against you. This is just how I'm moving. You moving like this. Cool. But what I don't do is act like a nigga don't exist. There are two of us.
Right.
Two.
Right.
The math ain't that hard.
Right.
So please don't act like I don't exist.
Right.
That's
I'll tell you what exacerbates that, in my opinion, is, let's just call it out, just racism. And particularly in Seattle, I think it has an interesting kind of racism, that it's so subversive. It's not, it has been said that in a place which is, it's a blue or purple out there in Washington, I should know this, but in a place where they will vote a black man into office, but might think twice about sitting next to one on the bus. And so you have that dynamic there, how progressive, but when it comes to the day-to-day lived experience, it gets different. Case in point, when I left there in 2015, I had a handful of white men come up to me and say, I've always thought you were so handsome, and, insert compliment. But I have never dated the X. Or my family would be really, if I brought home. So I got that, and these are folks been in my face, all the time that I've been there, folks I thought were attractive and cute, but then to find out basically because you were black, that's why I couldn't, step to you. So you have it coming sometime from our own, but then you have it coming also from, from white people or people who are not black. Lastly, I'll say on that, then you put the gay piece in there. It is, online social media hookup apps, we'll call them. It's interesting to find the black folks, and this is okay. It's okay, that will want to engage with me, in the bedroom, but not be seen with me out in public, just simply because, they may not be. That's just where they are in their journey with regard to their sexuality.
They want the chocolate fantasy. That's the real tea. That's what they want.
Oh damn! Well, we came out the gates hot.
Look, Seattle will do it to you. Seattle will do it to you. And there's so few of us.
I just need to clarify my chuckle because I don't mean to diminish the importance of the conversation, but Paris, when you said the buildup that you gave towards the word racism, you're like, and I'm gonna just put it out there. The word is racism. Bitch, we didn't do that. That's what went in my head. So, like, I don't mean to. Again, I'm not trying to diminish the importance of the conversation because it's truly there. But I was just like, girl, it all pulls back to racism in this country.
It absolutely does. Even how we treat one another. Just coming from a people who have been enslaved. Like there's only room for one of us in this area. F that. We can't cut on this deal, but F that. Like I'm just not doing it.
And that behavior within the black community that has entrenched themselves in, the white diaspora of the queer community. That new year, new me. I gotta bring some of them 5 to 6 syllable words out. But this is literally modern day house nigga shit. Like because you in the house, you're gonna act all sedity. That's an old word, but I mean, again, 3 syllables. You're gonna act a certain kind of way as almost like a gatekeeper into the broader community, and it's like, I'm sorry, but I am done with this notion of like centering whiteness in my life, regardless of how many or
Okay.
few of us, people of color,
Oh.
Black men, there are in the space that I'm occupying. Like,
Love it.
they're competing for what? They don't
Right.
want to be us
That
anyway.
part.
They trying to talk like
That
us. They trying to
part.
blow their lips like us. They trying to blow their
Right.
booties like us. They be trying to dance like us, and it don't work, by the
And
way.
it don't
Yeah.
work.
Like, so
It's
like
a word.
chasing after people that's chasing after the things that you possess is not my ministry. And so, to all the people that are listening, that was
There
not a
goes
real
that
word. That was
New Year's
a
resolution out the
mistake.
door.
But for all the people that
That's
are,
the espresso biting you in the ass.
girl,
So was.
gotcha.
They said, I know how to say bitch.
Get your read out now when you stuttering ass.
Oh, Lord.
But like,
But no, that's a
just
word.
don't have time for it. Just don't have time
that's a
for
word.
it.
I
Yeah.
agree. Well, I mean, we kind of already hopped on in, but we didn't even tell. Like, so Paris is well known as an HIV activist. He's well known in the pharmaceutical realm as well as a growth leader in that industry. But my first question was going to be like, where were you from? But Seattle. So how has Seattle, growing up in that like kind of environment, shaped how you maneuver in like the HIV world and things like that, as you speak to different groups and industries and people, et cetera, et cetera? How does that foundational come out today now for you?
Oh, wow. Well, and I'll tell you, by and large, it is my foundation being in Seattle. I consider myself a late bloomer, meaning at 27, I was a virgin until I was 27. And, I didn't actually come out, like, say the words I am gay to my parents, at least, till I was 33. But in that journey, so I was entrenched in the church. My parents were pastors. I was a pastor 2 times over, a youth pastor, all that in
We're
Seattle.
gonna have to talk about that too.
And yes. And so that journey being in Seattle, oh gosh, it gave me opportunities to to explore my sexuality and sexual orientation through various organizations. Well, backing up. So, my journey of coming out, it was faith and family that made it so that for me, I was the biggest hurdles. What's God going to think? And is my family going to want me? Or what are they going to think about me? And so I began to, in Seattle, explore my sexuality in bathhouses and other, avenues like that, place where I could be hidden, but still, express express who I was. So in that process, though, in that around 27, I had was approached by a gentleman who actually is recently deceased, Kyson Nomar. I have to say his name. He approached me and asked me if I wanted to work at Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center for an organization for what was called a Legacy Project. As a community engagement officer. Basically, we work to get butts in seats with regard to HIV research, so engage marginalized populations or those populations who have been historically identified as marginalized, particularly Black men, Black gay men, queer men, we'd say, into HIV prevention clinical trial research. I said no the first time he asked me because I said, well, that would really out me, not only locally, but nationally, because it was a national job. So I said no. He came back a year later, and I had, progressed in my journey, and I said yes. But in that time that I was, learning more about myself and coming out, I had attached myself, aligned myself to HIV work through the University of Washington on a community advisory board, through actually AIDS clinical trial unit. It's a research leg that researches all things pertaining to AIDS in the United States. And doing that work, doing community advocacy work around that, um, paralleled me starting work with Fred Hutchinson at the Legacy Project. So so that gave me the opportunity, the job, to be around LGBTQ plus community, not only in Washington State, but nationally and even globally.
Mhm.
And by and large, among Black and Brown LGBTQ plus people working in the field of HIV, I got to see people who huge leaders, Phil Wilsons of the world, and so many others, Cornelius Baker, and so many others that were doing amazing work as Black gay men who are living with HIV in the United States. It was a shining example and beacon for me, very affirming. A year after I started the work, I contracted HIV. Well, hey, so I'm working in the field and contracted the virus, and because of my networks and all that I was afforded, I got into care eventually. But Seattle, all that happened in Seattle, it gave me my foundation. And I'll just stop with this. One of the decisions I had made after I had contracted HIV is I want to be able to advocate for little Black boys or men who look like me around sexual orientation, coming out, around living with HIV. And so that's what I've been dedicated to doing. So there's a lot there. I'll stop, but
Yeah. Wow. I mean, there is a lot. Like my brain's like, "Ooh, I want to ask this. I want to ask this." But backing up, saying that like your parents are pastors, and then
yes,
also being a pastor as well before
yes.
your journey in the HIV world and coming out and things like that. How I'm also PK, so they say, and I haven't said it in a while actually on the podcast. For a while, they're like,
Drink.
"Bro, can always say PK." So cheers to
Drink,
that.
girl.
Did you just come out?
Right? They always
Girl,
cheers to
But
it. But being in that world is such a part of my story because, and you hit on it, you second guess everything, and you're thinking, okay, what are my parents gonna say? What is the church gonna say to them? Is God gonna hate me? But like,
right.
he made me in His image, and so it's like all these contradictory things that makes it so hard to come out in part of your journey. So now that you're out in this world, like, are your parents cool now? Like, what was that situation? Were they like, this ain't it, Playboy? Like, we disown you? What's your story in that regard?
Yeah, well, they never called me Playboy, although I'm sure they thought it. I'm sure they thought it a lot. I'll tell you, I at one point have said, wow, the story with regard to my parents is kind of boring. But it isn't boring because I was not one who was thrown out of the house. I was not one who love was taken away from because of either the HIV or coming out as gay. My parents are amongst my best friends on the planet. And if I could choose them again or choose them at all, I would choose them. I came out to them at an IHOP when I was 33. My mother said, "Well, son, this is not a new conversation between me and your father. Um, we've known since you were 13. Of course, why didn't you tell me?" And my
just
dad
whispering
just
behind your back for
whispering,
decades, honey.
Right.
just whispering. And my dad said, he said, "Son, whether you think this is a struggle or who you are, I just don't want you to live in shame."
Yeah.
And so I held on to that. Now, and that's what they said. And my parents have embraced my friends who are gay. They've adopted my gay friends, and that's my son. One being Boris Powell in Chicago. That's my son. My mother says so. Did they have their challenges? Did they do there with my sexual orientation? Perhaps yes, maybe, sure. I mean, but what I do know is they've always led with love. For all of my 3 brothers, well, one passed away, so 2 now. Love has been the driving force and the leading component, if you will, in our relationship. The love there. So
I love hearing that, and
Me too.
uh, being from the church and things like that, that's what the key message is in the Bible. It's like the greatest of these things is love. And to have to teach that and not to implement that, that's got to be their own struggle. And I love hearing that that's not their struggle. And honestly, what came to be for me as well is like it ended up not being their struggle. It's just like, you know what, you're my kid, I love you, et cetera, et cetera. And just to see the relationships that they formed even with like husband and things like that is things that I couldn't even fathom growing up at all, you know?
Right.
So I love hearing that as well, especially in the Black community, because a lot of times we hear in the Black queer communities how hard it is to be Black in our own community.
Right.
So we need these examples out there in these stories to say, it's okay. We love our kids. We love our community nonetheless.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Two things I'll say on that real quickly is what I realized in my journey of coming out and journey of living with HIV is, guess what? The biggest struggle, the biggest challenge was not them out there, my parents, white people, straight people, you name the community. The biggest struggle was me coming to terms with me and overcoming my own fears of will they or will they not accept me. We can talk about HIV a little bit later, but the biggest message or question I had when I was diagnosed was, who's going to want me now? And as I began to work through that question for myself and want me, I cared much less as to did someone else want me or did they not, want me or not. With the coming out, the rejection that I feared, when I got more secure, became more secure over years with who I was, I realized mom and dad will think and do what they do. Any other community will think or do what they're going to do. But inside, I'm secure. And last, I'll say the love that they provided for my parents, it gave me, if they would have responded adversely, I would have dug my heels in even more. I mean, like, you don't like this? I'm coming home in fishnets and everything. Like, you going to see it all. But because they love me so much, and this is what I'd say to parents or anyone who is in the place of supporting someone. And support is what an individual says support is for them, not what you think support is for them. But that love gave me an opportunity to explore and figure out myself in peace. Gave me an opportunity to say, maybe I'm not gay. Or I am, but I'm going to choose not to act on the behaviors. All these different things, which I am gay and I'm acting on it. But it gave me the space to just just through that in peace. That love there
word.
Gave me and to do it in peace and to listen objectively to my parents, because that love was there to take what they say into consideration, so yeah.
And Paris, how would you say this your own journey has impacted, the impact that you're having within the communities that you're serving through, the activist work that you're doing, the community work that you're doing? Like how is your own coming to terms with your not only your sexual identity, but also, these other descriptors of who you are relative to your lived experience? How's that influenced the impact that you're driving in communities?
The word that comes to mind is representation, representation, representation. When people see a Black man, gay, living with HIV, living his best life, every day is not perfect, but pursuing his dreams. Oh, and gorgeous too. When they see all of that come together, the intersectionality of the gorgeousness.
That part of it.
We talked about this in last week's AYA.
Right.
We did.
Someone actually just reached out to me from Malaysia. They found me through Instagram, who was just diagnosed with HIV. And this person said, I see your activity on Instagram. And of course, Instagram's kind of a red carpet situation for some. So, all of it's not like, everything's wonderful, but I got some hope from seeing your stories, your pictures. I post my story living with HIV and that journey on Instagram as well. But he says, if you can do it, I can do it too. And that's what I'd say in a nutshell, that I'd love to be a representation that allows one to say, if he can do it, then perhaps I can do it too. Do what? Want myself. Do what? Fulfill my dreams and desires. Do what? Love myself. Do what? Take up space in this world as a Black man, as a gay man, and as a person living with HIV. If he can do it, so can I, because that was the example that I was given when I started in the work with the Legacy Project so long ago. So it, and last I'll say, I've had people even share with me, I've never told anyone that I was living with HIV. Some of the folks that, because I really like to tell people that I'm living with HIV, in a sexual context. And I've had some say, I've never told anyone. And because you just shared that, I'm just going to tell you about me too. You're the first person I've told. That opens the door for great conversation around sexual health. And caring for oneself, a healthy sexuality, and what that could look like for them, and what that has looked like for me.
Yeah, and I love that representation. I love your answer too about it, representation being something that really drives it home for you and really helps show like that work, because a lot of people aren't just having just casual conversations, just about understanding, HIV and AIDS, and also just, what's the, not despelling. Despelling, is that the word I'm looking
Dispelling?
for?
Dispelling.
But just some of the things that were ingrained in people from back then. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like there's still so much work that needs to be undone, and so many people that needs to be re-educated on the realities and the fact of HIV and AIDS.
So
And it only happens when people really only find themselves learning about it when it either happens to them or happens to someone really close to them. Other than that, it's pretty much out of sight, out of mind for a lot of people.
Yes.
And like, even for myself, it took until literally within like a 12-month period, two of my best friends in my life, in the middle of my 20s, where I'm supposed to be, spraying it out there, where I was like, hold on, I need to educate myself. I need to also practice, more protective sex and stuff like that. And I need to start thinking about my own, my own health and stuff like that as well too. And to do my due diligence of understanding. And honestly, my best friends are some of the healthiest people I ever know. Like, don't get sick. The numbers come back from the doctors across the board, and I'm over here taking blood pressure medication, being like, girl, like, I'm just trying not to fall over. It's crazy how, not crazy, but it's just things like that people don't understand, that there are other things that people are going through that are just as lethal, that are taking people out just quick, but so many people want to have hangups on HIV and AIDS.
Yeah, which HIV and AIDS, I'd like to insert, thank you for that powerful testimony and truth. Thank you for normalizing or making an equal playing field with regard to, heart, heart disease, or you said high blood pressure in this case, and HIV, have different impacts on the system, but we need not, exceptionalize HIV as this thing way out here. Well, can't way out here, and everything else is okay over there. So there's that. HIV, for the listening audience, we may know this, HIV and AIDS are different. HIV, when it's contracted, if it's gone untreated with medication, it can progress to AIDS. And so basically what that means, when it gets to the place of AIDS, it has destroyed the immune system in such a way that you're open to what we call opportunistic infections, because you have no immune system to fight that. That does not happen once you initially contract HIV. So, and medication can bring you back from the place of your immune system being so decimated from the virus to a place where your immune system is strong again and able to fight off bacteria and just, enemies that come into the body. So medication, I learned, is my miracle.
Yeah. And in that regard, that's where the also the term U equals U comes into play, correct? Like,
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So, folks might know this, but U equals U untransmittable, undetectable means untransmittable. Undetectable, what's that mean? That there's so little virus in the blood that it cannot be detected by test, and that it cannot be, and therefore it is untransmittable. It cannot be transmitted sexually. A step further, you can have condomless sex And this is if you are taking your medication, HIV medication as prescribed.
Yeah.
Stay in care with your healthcare provider to take your blood test, twice a year, once a year, to make sure that the medication is still working as it should. But if you're taking it as prescribed, which is, if you're taking pill medication, it's once a day. There's not many other, but we'll just say pills once a day. Most likely you're going to get to an undetectable status, which means you're not going to be able to transmit that virus there. So that's really important. So without a condom, of course I support condom uses, absolutely. But some are like, well, I'll just stop there.
But that's huge, because like I still feel like for the Black and brown communities, we're still contracting HIV at a higher rate than the white counterparts. And it's due to the lack of education within the community still. So it needs to be said multiple times, even though we preach it a lot on our podcast. If we need to do it every damn episode, we need to do it every damn episode, because the lack of information, we got Google in our hands, even though we don't be using it that much on our podcast, but don't do better than us. But you got Google in your hands and everything like that. There's so much education out there that you shouldn't be this uneducated at the percentage differentiations between the two communities. So that's why we love having folks on the podcast to just restating it, that you equals you, and just your options out there as well. But question for you, like in that regard though, due to the lack of education in our Black and brown communities, what can the pharmaceutical industry do better in your opinion? And I know you're in it, so maybe if you don't want to answer, you can say, I got a paycheck coming, bitch. Shut up, Corral. You can say that if you need to. But what else can the pharmaceutical industry do to better educate these communities that are still contracting HIV at a faster rate than others?
What I love to see, and particularly with the pharmaceutical company that I work with and others, I love to see these companies partnering with community-based organizations around the country and the world who have the influence in the communities and the rights in communities of color. Folks may not come, will be typically less receptive to someone with a pharma hat on, but they are more open to the church of their choice, the community center of their choice, the house ball community of their, et cetera. And so ARMA, with their resources, can continue to support these initiatives financially, continue that and bolster that as well, provide, be a source of accurate information around the virus, prevention, treatment, and eventually cure is, extremely helpful. So continue to do that and bolster that kind of commitment to these organizations, Black and brown communities. I would say do more of that, and do what is necessary to make the medications accessible to all.
Yeah.
Yes.
Price is a barrier for a lot of folks.
Exactly. Price is a barrier to a lot of folks. So that's one barrier, but do all that you can to make it accessible to all.
And talk about, I'd love to hear your perspective on personal accountability, because while I 100% agree that there can be other things being done from a systematic standpoint to provide education, this is not a new conversation that we've been having. So, and there have been treatments, there have been testing out, and there has been advocacy work within our communities for decades, since the 80s, consistently. So talk to us a little bit about, personal accountability, because, being feet on the streets, right, and in the trenches in the communities, working with Black and brown communities, even in today's age where we have, preventative treatments to prevent HIV transmission, and supportive treatments, for those that have contracted HIV and other sexually transmitted diseases. What is the role of personal accountability in this?
Right. So, and it's sexually transmitted infection. So the infections, and we don't use the word disease anymore, just infections. So that's not a read at all, but just for the listening audience, because terminology is important here. Great question. And I can answer that from many perspectives. But real quickly, I will say this. I go back to Jarrell's comment around the experience of some African American or Black folks in Seattle. When we look at, and that I experienced discrimination, this competition drill that you had mentioned, when we look at life through the lens of the different barriers that Black and brown folks might face, not might, that do face uniquely. If we're talking about obviously racism here, we can look at um, socioeconomic oppression, those challenges in our community. These are things that we as a people have got to address and get through oftentimes before we can address in a healthy and responsible way HIV. For instance, I was in New York some years ago, and we were talking about HIV, and this woman, we were in the Bronx, New York, and we were talking about what are some of the, what would encourage Black and Latinx communities to get involved with HIV clinical trials, prevention clinical trials. And this woman, so poignantly, she stood up and said, she says, I'm Black, I'm poor. I think she had like 5 kids. I'm a woman. I'm single. She said, I do care about HIV. She says, I do have my concerns and also fears, but it's at the bottom of my list because she is too busy thinking about survival and all the other determinants, we call them social determinants of health, or things that impact her health, that she just didn't have the capacity in her mind, in her world, to address HIV head on. So personal responsibility. It is all, I believe our sexual health is all of our personal responsibility. But I have to say it's multi-layered because we have to look at the systems that Black and brown people are in that uniquely impact them and can make it harder to pursue HIV education, to disclose their HIV status, not giving one an out or excuse necessarily. Disclosure, that's a big topic. I don't think everyone needs to disclose. We can jump into that too. But, if we go back to the dynamic that Jarrell had mentioned, what we know is that Dr. Greg Millett had produced written an article. He's a king in the HIV space, in the public health space, an article that's called Triply Cursed. It was talking about Black men, racism, homophobia, and sexual orientation. They have to get through those 3 things before, that those are 3 things that stop people from getting tested and disclosing their HIV status: racism, homophobia, and what was the one I said? Racism, homophobia, and
Sexual orientation.
Yeah. So their own, so internalized homophobia, etc. So all those barriers are in the way of people, disclosing, even reaching out for help. Me, myself, it was faith, and my family. That's why I didn't pursue, different avenues to learn more about my sexuality. So all I'd say is a long way of saying that's multi-layered, and we have to consider the unique experience of Black and brown folks first, or we call them social determinants of health, that impact, how their one's sexual behavior and their own health. So addressing that, let's stigma, racism, all this I just mentioned, addressing that. So, but then at the end of the day, yes, we've got to take responsibility, educate ourselves, get knowledge, and live healthily as we can.
And I'm very grateful that you said that too, because that's something that I don't think a lot of people think about. I think people often will judge someone like, oh, well, you should have thought about this, or you should have done this in order to, help prevent yourself from, maybe getting HIV or getting to the point of having AIDS, etc. But you're absolutely right. I mean, so many of us are just fighting daily battles just to get to the next day. It really does. And honestly, there are some things that at the bottom of your list that somehow and sometimes often just get forgotten about, and it's one thing to know about something, but it's another thing to practice, right?
Mhm.
Because that means you have to take time to do something. And if you only have so many hours of the day, that means you're taking time for something else,
Right.
you know?
Right.
And to your point too, is like a lot of the things in play when it comes to the Black and brown, communities, as far as like, being able to even just, have basic health care, to be able to have a primary physician that you can, talk to and see on a regular basis, to
Right.
be able to go get testing, to have that type of relationship where you feel comfortable. Because that's another thing that we got to talk about too, is that level of vulnerability, to be able to open yourself up to someone, to be able to talk about those things,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
and there's so much layers, and you really just kind of opened my eyes, and I was like, damn, this is an onion, bitch, and we are peeling.
Yeah,
We had
absolutely.
Outback.
Right. We can't, there's some would say, Black and brown African Americans represent 14% of the US population. Yet 52% of those who are living with HIV in the United States. And so we look at how is a smaller amount of, the U.S. population, ethnic population, how is it that HIV exists, disproportionately in that group? And, there are unique determinants of health, historical racism, socioeconomic oppression. A list goes on and on that have made it harder for us to access health care in this country and be informed. We saw this with COVID, and so it's not because we have a bunch of people who are having. Studies show that it's not about riskier sex, and I don't like using that word, and that's an antiquated word anyway. It's not about
100%.
that, but we look at the different barriers, but at the end of the day, Dewan, yes, personal responsibility. But there are unique challenges that allow one to take personal responsibility like they may want to.
Yeah. And I would say honestly too, that maybe part of the accountability for myself is just making sure that I am having these conversations with people around me, and I
Yes.
am, changing the stigma and doing my due diligence to make sure that, those who I have an ear to are comfortable enough to be able to come to me to have conversations. They're okay with having these conversations, and that I'm also encouraging them to do the same with other people as well too. And I think that to me would be something that I can do as accountability, not
Yes.
necessarily about figuring like, well, how can I do? Well, just simply talking about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was going to say, with regard to living with HIV, who would want me? What's my question? I would say, in talking to different groups, schools, etc., to kind of generalize the conversation around HIV, because most can't relate with living with HIV, but they can relate to feeling unwanted in their life. Can all think of a time you felt unwanted. And so we talk about that. I talk about how I felt unwanted, but then the conversation progresses to, okay, so we know how it feels to feel unwanted. When did we felt wanted? So when we talk about when we have felt wanted, what that looks like, I said, so let's now work to help those around us feel wanted. And it may sound simplistic, but if we worked hard to help each other feel wanted, we could address racism, we could address homophobia, we could address so much, because we are working to help others feel wanted, which creates an environment for people to disclose their status when necessary, to seek out, healthcare and talk about HIV, to come out as gay. So yeah.
Where can folks, if folks are listening to this, where can folks either seek additional education? PrEP is a big thing. There's a lot of opportunities,
Yes.
different avenues to get that. What's the best way in your mind to further educate themselves, get the support systems that they need, and potentially, if they want to go on PrEP or need medication, to potentially get it at cheaper rates than they're currently being told or currently obtaining it now?
Correct. So, within one's region, you can Google your health department, local health department there, and, type in, HIV and see what services they have there. You can also, put in the search bar, AIDS Service Organization, or ASO, and you can, see what organizations serve populations who are living with HIV or who have questions about it. On a national scale, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC.org, is another, link that one can go to, or you can hit me up, Paris Mullen, on my Instagram, and I'll be willing to answer questions and have dialogue with you. But yeah, I would say Google, first your health department in your area, or Google, AIDS service organization or HIV organizations, near me, and see what pops up.
Perfect.
I can't wait to meet you, Paris.
I
I
cannot
can't wait to meet you in Seattle. I cannot
wait to meet you. Absolutely. We'd even talk about surviving sexual violence. Maybe that's on another.
We're gonna have to have you back. That's what we're gonna have to do, because there's a lot. And then also Q Care Plus. We had Q Care Plus on here what, 2 years ago, probably almost at this point, and now I'm starting to see them everywhere. Friend. So they're great company. So there's many avenues to definitely get the education, the medicine and that you need to make sure that we're not living uneducated and unknown and things like that. And yes, I know there's always this vulnerability piece, but just know at least you got your aunties here, you got Paris here, that if you need to drop in the DMs, drop in our DMs, and we'll definitely help you get the support that you need. So I guess we'll take a quick little tea break, and then we'll get to Ask Your Aunties.
All right.
Yay!
We interrupt this episode for very important information.
That's right. You've been asking for it for a long time, and we have heard you.
Yep, it's been a long time coming, but it's finally here.
Yo,
aunties
got merch! Hey, that's right. You know what? We got tees, we got long tees, we got sweatshirts, we got fanny packs, there's just a whole gamut of stuff out there. So go and check that out.
We are so appreciative of your love and support, and we are so excited to launch it. Girl, where can we find it at?
Ma'am, they can head right over to minoritareport.com to check out the selection.
That's right. That's MINORITEA report.com.
Woo! I'm about to go get me some myself. All righty, ladies. What time is it?
Ask your
auntie.
And who has it this week? Or Jarrell?
I got it today. And so I was reading an article. First of all, it's a messy article. Okay. It was, I think, done by Queerty. And I guess the whole thing was these two guys were getting married, but the best man slept with the fiance, and the groom was like, I don't want him in my wedding pictures because every time I see the wedding pictures, I'm going to think about him fucking my man. So that's where it started. And then I did the mistake of going in the comments. And it was nothing but a bunch of gay people being mad, being like, well, what's wrong with him sleeping around? And, why are you holding on to these hetero, normatives, and girl, unpack your trauma, and pretty much saying stuff like, well, fuck him back. So then that way it's even. And then you can look at it and it could be a throuple, one big happy family. And it got me thinking, I was like, man, there was no support of a person not wanting to be in an open relationship or not wanting someone else's baggage present in his new journey. It was all about, well, all the gays sleep together. And so that's on you. And I kind of felt sad because I'm like, at what point did it become more acceptable to be, fluid and open than also just having something that you just want for yourself too? And I say that because here in Seattle, most of my friends remind my partner and I all the time, we're the only monogamous couple in Seattle. For the most part, everyone's open, fuck them, fuck both of them, fuck one of them, the other don't know. They just going out here like this. And no shade, do what you do. But sometimes it almost sounds like there's an issue with our relationship because we don't want that. So I guess my question is to you all, when did it become bad to want monogamy and to not want the mess?
Well, maybe even to that last part, I don't think monogamy and then the opposite of it is mess. Maybe I don't think the opposite, or like if it's an open, I don't think it has to be messy. So I'll start maybe there. But I mean, it was interesting when you brought this up. I was like, I don't hear those same questions. So I don't know, Carell's just the old Mary Braun or what. But I mean, I think one cool thing about being in part of the LGBTQIA plus community is ultimately deciding what you want your relationship to be. If it's still monogamous, awesome. If it's open, awesome. If it's somewhere in between, cool. And not feeling the pressure one way or the other. Because that's definitely heteronormative shit. Like to feel the pressure part of it, you know? And so I would probably shoot back to, and maybe that's not a good word. I would probably reply back to.
Don't say shoot back.
Right, exactly. Because there's a lot of terminology in that.
Look, they will pick that out.
Dude, that sure
Carell
would.
says shoot back.
And bitch, I'm gonna talk about skeet shooting. No, I'm just playing.
Okay.
I'm joking. But I think within the community, we should stop doing the pressure. We got the pressure all our lives to stay in the closet and all this stuff. And then we still gonna come out and put more pressure on relationships when relationships are already hard. So I would say to you, Gerald, don't feel that pressure of monogamy or not monogamy, or you choosing to change your mind at a later date as well. I would that, and then also just like the messy part, I don't think it has to be messy. I think people just like mess.
I meant messy for his situation, for the article.
Right, that situation is definitely messy.
Yeah, that's messy. That's what I meant.
But I think a lot of people choose messiness as well. Like I feel like if you're having a conversation with your partner or partners of saying these are the rules or these are the guidelines, and we live within them and keep that communication open, I don't think it has to necessarily lead to mess. So again, just do what works for you. And it's not a bad thing one way or the other. So like, if you feel that, I would say don't feel that. But also, I hope others that are in maybe a monogamy situation, that they shouldn't feel bad either for their situation. Do what works for you and shut the fuck up. What are you thinking, Paris?
I was going to be the last one to talk because I've been talking so much. So, I have to say I've never been in an open relationship that my partner knew about. That's a whole other conversation, but never been in a technically an open relationship. So I talk in theory, but my own journey around the thought of being in an open relationship is maybe one or two or three things. One, I have had to address my own sense of insecurity, even jealousy, and security specifically. Will my love be taken? Will the love that I want or need be taken away from me, be stolen by someone else, or what if they like someone else more than they like me? Those are my issues. That's my stuff. I found and centered my love. Easier said than done. And I don't think it's a one decision, then I'm good for a lifetime. It's a daily coming back to who am I? The communication, honesty, and my own journey around around sex. Historically, I'm a sex addict. And so one of my issues was honesty around the sex I was having. A partner I was with, I was, doing a whole bunch behind his back some years ago. And guess what? At the end of the day, learning, it wasn't even so much what I was doing, but I didn't know how to be honest about it and have a conversation about what I wanted, what felt good, what didn't feel good, what I felt aligned with me. I didn't even know how to do that. So the honesty piece there, and those are two things I would just say off the bat there. So we have to put in, if we're talking about literature, that Ethical Slut is a book that one I think should read that talks about exactly what we're talking about right now.
What you think of Duan?
I really love that the social dialogue around the construct of what makes a successful relationship is expanding to include things like polygamy, polyamorous, and all of these other non-binary terms that it has to be this or that. I also like the notion that we are destigmatizing people who have differently constructed relationships that work for them. I think the area of danger that's inherent within, I think, the base of the question that's being asked, Jarrell, is this notion of what works for me has to work for everybody else, because apparently
Right.
everybody else is just like me. I've recently have been having some conversations about, the concept of sexual appetite, sexual preferences, um, monogamy, polygamy, and all these kinds of things, just socially. And my perspective has been pretty consistent. People need to figure out what works for them. Period. What works for you, and the energy and the person that you attract to you and that you decide to couple up with or thruple up with or quadruple up with or whatever up with, that's your choice to make and for you to own. And the more that people are kind of in your business, right, those are the people you need to be looking out for, because ain't nobody
That's where
should
the
be
mess start.
because ain't
Yes.
nobody needs to be knocking on your goddamn bedroom door unless they are kicking that door in to do some business that you invited them to do.
Period.
So
That's
like,
a word.
so this notion of like, kind of monogamy shaming in some regard, I get that a lot of it's like counterculture. It's like, oh, well, we're trying to normalize the other by, in a sense, demonizing what is considered heteronormative. But the reality of it is that we're humans. And yes, there is a lot of when you think about the marriage institution, when you think about, how people get coupled in the context of love versus lust versus convenience, right? In terms of how couples get together and why they stay together, it could be one of those three particular areas. And so don't be bothered and worried about what's going on with somebody else. I mean, that's my advice, and at the end of the day, what works for you until you decide that it doesn't work anymore, if you ever get to that point. But I find it very disconcerting when people insert themselves into situations that ain't got shit to do with them.
1000%. Yeah. To me, it was more so about, and I understand, normalizing, that relationships don't have to be a this or that. It can be, a spectrum, right? I just found it very odd that in the same people who are arguing this spectrum can then disconnect or dissociate one part of the spectrum, because that's where I tend to be. I'm not questioning what my relationship status is or how we're doing things, right? But it's what I believe. And I'm part of the community. And to be part of the community and to have someone say, well, how you feel either means you're chasing hetero people and what they want out of life, or you have trauma to unpack. And I'm like, that don't have shit to do with the fact that I don't want all of that. I just want this.
Yeah.
So why you got to fix your mouth to try to tell me that what I want is actually an issue? I'm not coming for your throuple, your polygamy, or any of the rest of that shit. So why do you fix your mouth to say that the fact that I don't want that means I have the issue? I can accept it and not want it. And that was my whole thing, is that I've had people question my acceptance because of the fact that that's not what I want.
You know what that is?
And that's what got me. And that's what that stemmed from this question.
These are the people that have visited that new club. Have you heard of it? It's called Projection. Yes, honey, it'd be fitting stadiums of people. Just
girl,
because
you in your gay delusion era.
Right, like at the end of the day, anybody that tries to tell somebody else that you have a problem because you don't believe what they think you should believe, that's the notion of I'm pointing one finger at you and three fingers back at me and one at the moon. Because at the end of the day, again, it goes back to this notion of look, judge not lest ye be judged. Don't be throwing no rocks if you live in glass houses. Like, at the end of the day, we all can have opinions about certain things, but I think I personally draw the line when it comes to telling somebody how they should feel or what their
1,000%.
experience is. Like, it's not my place as a third party that's not in that experience to tell somebody what they should be experiencing, what they should be feeling, that they need to unpack some stuff, that they have trauma there, that they have, that I'm now all of a sudden I'm diagnosing you like I'm like, the defunct Dr. Phil, like, this is not, that's
Not the
that
defunct.
that is more a reflection of my insecurities and my
Yes.
unpacked trauma and all the things that
Mhm.
I'm dealing with and try to come to terms with, and trying, in a sense, Paris, you had mentioned at the top of the call this notion of representation. I feel like people lean into this notion of projection in part because it's they want to see others struggling along with them, and so they project out to these other people saying, oh, well, you don't feel that way, that's not really what's going on, this is not the real tea, and da da da, not because of your actual situation. It's because the person that's doing all that spouting off at the mouth or at the keys of the keyboard, it's because you have issues that you have not unpacked and that you're not comfortable with.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. And to Paris, you said something that resonated with me, because you were like, I have not been in an open relationship that that you knew of, in that sense.
That he knew of.
Rather he knew of, right? That he knew of. But your honesty about the whole idea of, what if I lose my love to someone else and stuff like that. That actually happened to me, and I actually put myself out there to be in an open relationship and lost to somebody else. But Auntie Petty was like, well, then I'm gonna break their shit up. So that's what I ended up doing. And then I was like, okay, unpack the trauma. But I realized
she screamed it into the hole.
Right. And so that's what she meant by the messiness. She said, I done lived the messiness. That's why I got this question.
I done lived the messiness.
Did you break it up though? That's the one. Did you end up breaking?
I sure did. Okay. Absolutely.
And still
I'm gonna remind you. No, I don't want you. I just want to break it up. Like, I can't have you. Can't nobody have you. It was definitely that energy. But 100% though, I had to realize that there were some insecurities that I had to think about for myself, and I had to unpack and really start to understand and love myself and be like, I know what I bring to the table. Like, so although I would never want to be in an open relationship again, I know that I love my partner enough that if he stepped out, if he did something, it's not going to break me. Okay. And honestly, it probably wouldn't break us because I know what I bring to the table. And if we are still having conversation about the possibility of having that set table together, then we'll probably be okay because I know what I bring and I'm not jealous of other people in that regard, if that makes sense. So I just wanted to say I really resonated because that's literally part of, I think, where a lot of people have that trauma or they have that where a lot of work needs to be done with understanding how to, even begin to have the idea of having an open relationship, right? It really does start with yourself and that communication.
1,000.
And one might need help through therapy or talking to people who are in what they perceive to be a healthier, open relationship. Seek those kinds of sources as maybe a guiding light or points of reference. There is a lot to unpack. And I want to appreciate, this journey that we as queer, gay, same gender loving, LGBTQ plus folks are navigating around this thing called relationships. It is outside of the heteronormative construct that we've been given. So we are learning to drive the car while it's in motion. Luckily we have people that can that can help us drive that car, therapists, etc. That can help us make decisions. I didn't know how to be honest in my relationship. And what I now know is that being honest is easier said than done. It can be. I had my own fears and issues and barriers, and lying was a protective mechanism for me, which did not allow me to have an open and honest relationship with this person. I know how to be more honest now, but I didn't know how to be then. And I think a lot can just start with putting things on the table, and then let's begin to figure out where do we go from here. But when we hide
was
things,
good.
if it's kept in secret, what's it say? Our sicknesses are live in secrets or something like that. You're sick as your secrets or something of that nature.
Something like that. But community, continue to send your Ask Aunties questions to aya@minorietyreport.com or DM us. Quickly, R.I.P. to Harry Belafonte.
Yeah.
Man,
Lost legend.
96 years old. Like
Mhm.
that's you know what, we use the words icons and legends very loosely. That's an icon and a legend. 96 to be that level of stardom for that long, and he's like the number one activist of like all time. Like he did shit for our community as a Black community that we can't even fathom. The rooms he was in negotiating for our behalves, that's incredible. And then he was just talented and all this stuff and great looking and all this stuff. But at the core of him, he cared to see the next generation be and do better. And that's sexy as all get out,
Yeah.
So
Yes.
R.I.P. to Harry.
Yeah.
Get on the boat, the banana boat.
Who's been playing that in the background or something at some portion of this of the minority,
Right?
Yeah.
Like Harry Belafonte family, can we get that license?
Right.
The rights.
That part. Yeah, that part. That's true. That part.
Y'all ain't about to take this down from YouTube. We need this up.
It
But
just
yeah,
struck
rest
me
in
that
peace.
I was happy to see one of our figures, a Black figure, live as long as he did.
Yeah.
That part, sad to see him go, so sad.
Yeah.
And I was happy to see us living, a Black man living as long as he did. Our lives are, jeopardized. And so when I think of, the great, it seems like, the song even says, and the good ones, they die young. Has anybody here seen my old friend? That's and the part of that is the good ones, they die young. We think of Whitney Houston, we think of Prince, we think of Bob Marley, we think of Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
So many. We think of, we can go back even further, names to my mind.
Aaliyah, Left Eye.
Yes, exactly. Die young, and so to see it's Cicely Tysons of the world, the Harry Belafontes of the world, who have lived, through it all. It shows it is possible.
And he was vocal to the end too. Like he was still doing interviews, saying, "No, we need to stand up to for George Floyd," and like he was to the end.
To the end, and I need to see that possibility.
Yeah, man. And then another thing we just saw, the Noah's Ark reboot is coming to MTV.
I'm excited.
I'm excited. When the original series is on, we didn't have. I don't think. What was it? Showtime? What was it on? Like
it was on
Cinemax
Showtime.
Like
I think it was Showtime.
We didn't have Showtime, so I didn't. Yeah. I wasn't checking for it because we didn't have it then. So I don't know too much about Noah's Ark. I've seen it here and there over the years now, but I'm excited to kind of maybe even rewatch the original series before the new ones come out to kind of just catch up and get up to speed. Because anytime there's just melanation on TV like that and queer melanation, I'm gonna be here for it. So
well, this is like part of queer television history, especially for Black people. Yeah. This is an all Black ensemble cast.
And they're all coming back too.
And obviously it was modeled after kind of like the Sex and the City, and it was campy in that kind of way. But to see relationships, friendships between, 4 melanated brothers in different what girl?
Bitch, when he drove that car through the house, I said, bitch, that's me.
Oh Lord. Drunk on seeing himself.
Right. But never before have we in the Black gay queer community have seen a television show that has this level of representation that felt, albeit campy as it was, but it felt authentic and real, and the conversations were real, and the topics that they explored were relevant to what was happening in our communities then and still happening today. So I'm really excited to see this kind of reboot. I kind of wish that it was a series instead of a movie, because I feel like you just have better opportunity to explore character development and where they're at today in a longer format.
Right.
But I'm also curious to see how they'll choose to modernize. And hopefully they'll do a lot better of a job with this movie than, those that did with Sex and the City and the reboots of that, because I feel like in the attempts, in those attempts, it has been it just didn't feel genuine and it didn't feel real. It felt more like a caricature versus reliving, um, catching up with where these characters are today through a modern lens. So I'm really hopeful to see a little bit more of that, and I'm actually really excited to see what how they envision their mature relationships to have evolved. Since the last time that they were on air. Are they all still connected? Are they fractured a little bit? Have they moved on to other circles? And are they finding themselves back? What's the impetus for bringing them back? And what's the storyline? I'd be really curious to see what that looks like.
Do you want it to be a fairy tale ending, or do you want it to be more realistic, where there might be friendships that fractured, and that is what it is, kind of thing? For the representation of queer blackness on TV, it's it gets hard in that regard, because you don't want it to be like, oh, of course the black people are fighting again, But then on the other side, it's real relationships go through these ebbs and flows and things like that, and that's reality. Not just because of black people, but for humanity.
Yeah. So as a fan of the show who's literally watched every episode, and I have watched actually the last movie that they did to try to wrap it up as well too, I don't want it to be that fairy tale ending, because that fairy tale ending is what they gave in the movie last time, and it felt like a disconnect. And I agree with Dewan. It didn't give them chance to do that story arc between the last season they did and them coming back a few years later to then do the movie, right? And so I am concerned about it being a movie as well too. But for the pure fact of the representation, I am going to stand up. I am going to watch. I am going to make sure that people stream and watch this, because it matters. Because this is the type of things that we need to stand behind. Not that we host shit, okay?
Right.
Even though
Curtis
that
Hamilton,
girl,
that was good. His storyline was good.
But there were more than people than just him. I would rather it be something that's more scripted and authentic than that stuff that they gave us that don't show representation. Because the cool thing about Noah's Ark is it showed that queer black men were not a monolith.
Right.
And that was the one thing I love, is that there were just so many different types of gay black men.
Yep.
From style to personality to how you wear your hair, how your mannerisms. It was just really cool to see us, and kind of how we talked about at the beginning, be different and everyone have a seat at the table. There was no competition. And that's what we need. And that's why I want this to be successful, because those are some things in our community, especially in the gay black community, that we have to, as a community, start figuring out, right? Because it becomes this thing of things like, oh, are you black enough? Oh, you're in an interracial relationship, so you're not black enough, and all sorts of other conversations where then all of a sudden we start to separate again. But shows like that show that it doesn't give up. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you're black. Use a nigga to all the rest of them, and we need to come together.
I'm done.
Oprah, Obama, Beyonce, it don't matter. At the end of the day,
Jay said it on the side. He's still looking too. I'm a nigga, you a nigga.
Look, and they will root for your downfall. They will root for your bitch like Chutes and Ladders, bitch, all the way down. They be waiting.
Not Chutes and Ladders.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, well, so before we get out of here, we just want to quickly we do a curiosity segment where we just kind of try to quickly get to know you. So it's either like an either or your favorite. So we'll throw a couple out here now.
For me?
Yes.
I scoped out your Instagram, and actually we know quite a few same people, so I don't know how our paths didn't cross because Dewan and I used to live in Chicago. So I'm like, hold on, how you know? So it seems like you your little vacation locale. So what's your favorite vacation destination?
Broadly speaking, any place that has a great combination of tropical, so give me my beaches, but a city really close. So if we're thinking, so in the US, I like Miami, I love the West Coast there, thinking about, California and the LA area. But, love, like Greece,
Ooh.
Italy. I was just in Portugal and Porto. Was just beautiful. So I love that, but on a quick jump down to Miami or go over on to the West Coast to LA. Mexico, I've never been, and I want to get there. I'll be there in July, Puerto Vallarta.
Oh, I just got back. I just gonna love it there.
Everyone's been except for me.
Yeah, boo. You're gonna enjoy it. Do you like a swim short or a Speedo?
Oh my gosh. It's a square cut Speedo.
Okay. Yep.
A square cut Speedo. I used to do that little skinny strap on the side. I'm gonna get to that again, but it's that square cut Speedo.
Okay. She said, I'm gonna get back to it though.
Because they keep coming anyway, whatever I wear. So just whatever. That's had to get that. They have not stopped coming.
I know that, literally and figuratively.
It have not stopped. So square cut Speedo to a short though, but like that 5-inch inseam cute short.
Okay. What's in your book club right now? I saw you had like a little book club moment going.
Oh, absolutely. And I just finished. I have to say it's Come Here, Go Away, Stop Running from the Love That You Want. And I'd run over here and pick it up for you, but I don't want to leave the screen. So there's that one I have read, and I'm reading again with another book club, but it is amazing.
Okay. I'm going to look that up. Your favorite market days story or memory?
That I remember,
that's a word.
Market days story memory. Nothing out of the usual.
Right? Depends on what your usual is.
Right, what the usual is. That's right. I love how it brings everyone together from around the country and even parts of the world. I'm running into old friends I haven't seen in forever. That part. That's one reason I love market days. Shout out to Chicago. That's where market days is. I love the house parties that take place all around market days. Of course, I love the hot men that are up and down the streets there, just bop around, meeting different people. But spending that weekend with friends is great, so the drinking a given, but that doesn't make it so great and fun for me. It adds to it, but it's not the center for me. So that's probably a very boring story. You want something very specific.
Okay. Nah, we be telling ours every year on here.
But it's amazing, and I'll be back this year.
We'll probably be up there.
That's okay. Look, my answer would have been the naps, because I tell you, they be coming in.
To be honest, right?
Look,
that's a word.
Ooh, that Saturday afternoon nap.
I be saying I'm gonna do it, but then I end up just crashing at like 8:30. Like, damn, wake up the next day, like, damn, what I miss?
Right. And I'm not that mad about it either. I'm not that mad about it. Right.
I got my money. I still got my money. That's a win.
I got my money and my sanity and my draws.
Look,
it's good.
Maybe not the draws. I wouldn't have mine. They'd be taken a long time ago.
Let's see here. Jill Scott or Erykah Badu?
Oh, Jill Scott.
Oh,
Okay.
Love that. Janet or Beyonce?
That's canceled. You're trying to get me canceled. I see. I have to say Janet.
That's fair.
I have to say Janet.
Why is that so fair?
Yeah. Why Janet?
Why is that? Because Janet was the icon that Beyonce's shoulders. She stands on her shoulders.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Janet, she paved the way in new territory for Black women. Her artistry, so and her talent is just immense. I wish she would act more.
Yeah.
I love
Oh, so you doing it better.
I Penny. Okay, Penny. I don't know if y'all old enough here there, but on Good Times. So I love her acting. But Janet, she's just an icon. She is the mother in the industry. Beyonce stands on her shoulders, and so that's just how it is.
1,000. Let's see here. Are you going to the Renaissance tour?
I am. I'm
What
going.
are you wearing?
Oh, you know what? They're making it right now overseas.
Okay.
So
She said, "I called the atelier."
Right. They're making it right now. So I'm gonna fly in for a fitting, or they're gonna send it over here. So we'll see. But the big reveal will be revealed. I have to get it together, but I'm definitely going.
Yes.
I'm together. Anyway.
Which city are you going? Or cities?
Chicago for now, and I am looking to go again in another city. So.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then we'll end here. Coming to the stage is Paris Mullen. What song is playing?
What song is playing?
What song is playing when they say that? And it could be anything. It could be as ratchet or it could be as gospel-y you want.
Simply the Best by Tina Turner.
That's not a bad
Aww,
That's
so cute.
I love that.
So cute. That's what came to my mind.
That is so presidential. She's like, let me give you my government answer.
right. So, I mean, when you said that, the first thing came to mind. The first one was, "I'm a survivor. I'm gonna do that." That was the first thing.
Okay, come on, DC.
That was the first thing.
Can't be mad at that one. Well, Paris, we appreciate you taking time to chill with us,
Yes,
man. You're welcome back anytime because there's a lot we still need to unpack. So, tell the community where to find you, what you want to promote, anything coming up that you just want to tout.
Yeah, so on Instagram, I'm Paris Mullen. It's Paris. Last name Mullen, Mullen. Just as that. That's my handle there. So as well as LinkedIn, not hard to find, as well as Facebook. I am starting a nonprofit called, for-profit actually, called Hope for Us. And its mission is to inspire hope and a sense of self-worth for those who've experienced trauma in the areas of HIV, coming out, and particularly coming out in faith communities, and those who are survivors of sexual violence. I have a particular emphasis on working with Black and Brown communities around these themes, on just providing my story first and foremost, on my experience and how my journey has led me through a place of greater sense of self-worth and hope through it all. We're having an event in Chicago in August. I'll be publicizing it on all my social media platforms. It's going to be like a town hall talking about answering the question, who's going to want me, or how I answered that question, and how folks who live with HIV, they have found a sense of hope and self-worth. So representation from Black trans women, Black cis women, we'll have there, and obviously Black older men. And folks who are in my age range as well. So that's coming, open to the community, DJ, music, all that's going to be happening. And look out for more because I'll be getting my podcast started here next month.
Oh, you got
Hope Speaks is what it's called. Hope Speaks.
Hope Speaks.
All right.
Dope. Well, Paris, we appreciate you, man. And anything else on your hearts and minds, Jarrell Dewan?
I said enough.
Well,
I love y'all.
Love you too, boo.
Love
And
you
community,
too.
watch your hands, watch your legs, watch your ass. See you next week.
Bye, y'all.